Welcome to the Setfords Podcast with me, your host, Eric Woollard-White. In this edition, the second edition of our podcast, we are talking to some unsung heroes within Setfords who work within our business development team. We're going to learn all about CIFAS, Credit Industry Fraud Avoidance System. It's a great scheme if you're on the right side of it, but if you're on the wrong side of it, it really doesn't work for you in terms of how you can apply for mortgages and loans and things like that. So Jeremy Asher is going to tell us all about that. And then finally on the podcast, we are going to talk to one of our award-winning members of staff who is going to explain why having a motivated workforce here who support our consultants is really important to the work that they do. So please stay with us and enjoy this episode. So joining me now on Open Matters, the Setfords Podcast. You heard it here second. Welcome, Jeremy Asher. You're a Consultant Regulatory Solicitor, according to your profile, which also says you are one of the first lawyers to specialise in and write about CIFAS, which, according to Google this morning, stands for Credit Industry Fraud Avoidance System. Sounds like a very worthy cause. Does seem to cause people some problems. Can you divulge and tell us something about that?
Okay, so CIFAS is one of a number of fraud databases that the banks and other financial organisations use to flag people that banking and finance consider to be a risk, and they are suspected of committing a financial crime. So that could be fraud, could be money laundering, could be all sorts of different things. And the idea behind it is to prevent people who present a fraud risk causing an issue to the banking and finance sector.
So it serves a real purpose.
So it really does, and it's an important thing, and it does prevent an awful lot of crime.
Yeah.
And the idea is, and it's right at the front line of anti-fraud detection. The banks spot these things very quickly. The amount of fraud, as you probably gathered in the statistics, is like 40% of crime is now fraud.
Yeah.
And they're used to block fraudulent transactions, and where they can identify the culprit, they will then block them from getting banking and finance for up to 6 years.
Yeah.
Generally, where you're a suspect is 6 years.
So there's a marker that sits on a file somewhere, that flags you.
Exactly that. And behind that, in certain circumstances, they'll also report to the National Crime Agency, and those people could be investigated in due course for criminal offences. So that's the idea of it. But the trouble is, it's a very blunt tool.
Right.
And they use a lot of algorithms, they use a lot of advanced AI, they use a lot of assumptions, and unfortunately, innocent people get caught into them. And they could be the victims of scams, or they could be perfectly innocent. Somebody else has done something, for example. So they've ended up carrying the can.
So what does that sit on their credit file or something?
It sits behind the credit file. Okay. So you don't even see it. And that's part of the problem. So people can have these things for 6 years and not even know about them.
Yeah.
They could have it 4 years down the line, and then suddenly they're blocked from getting a bank account or a mortgage or something. This thing comes to light, and it could be something really quite innocuous that's occurred.
Yeah.
But 4 years ago, and of course, they might have changed their phone, they changed their email. Suddenly, their evidence of their innocence has gone.
Right.
And before you know, it's particularly serious with people who work in the financial sector. So accountants, banking, finance, insurance. People are in those sectors are sacked on the spot when they have this.
So as soon as it appears, it's an
absolute.
You're out the door.
You're out the door, and because it's a blunt tool, there's an awful lot of injustice for the people who are badly affected.
Right.
Don't get me wrong. There's an awful lot who are correctly marked, but it's for people who are
innocent victims.
Yeah, the innocent victims who are impacted by these things that I'm there to try and help.
And so how do you go about that? That sounds really complicated.
It is.
Where do you start? Yeah, I mean, a minefield.
It's turned into a real mashup of an area of law. So I'm using data protection law, I'm using fraud, I'm using money laundering. I'm using banking regulations, my knowledge of banking systems. I come from a prosecution background, so I understand prosecution processes and techniques and things like that. So it's a real mishmash of law, and that's why when I came to Setfords, it ended up being its own little thing.
Yeah.
Because it crosses so many different aspects.
I mean, it sounds like it. I mean, I'm just thinking, from my own experience, if one of these was kind of sitting in the background on a file somewhere about me, and I was kind of, transferring my mortgage across, for example,
exactly.
I wouldn't be able to kind of, move house. It would literally stop a massive life event. It would ruin things for you potentially.
And it does. And if you look at the way mortgage rates are going now, people are losing their homes because they can't remortgage. They suddenly can't find that extra, 100% cost of their mortgage, and they're starting to lose. And it's also impacting businesses as well, because these markers are used with the bounce back loans.
Right.
So quite interestingly, the bounce back loans were granted very quickly without any personal guarantees. And what we're finding now is that when loans go into default, the directors are being marked with SIFAS.
Right.
So they can't get a company business account. They can't sit as a director. The businesses end up folding. So it's a really serious issue in itself.
So it really can affect your life in a number of ways. So you're obviously a specialist in this.
Yes.
How many people are there like you in the UK?
There's one other guy I'd trust.
Really?
One other.
Right.
And we came at it around about the same time.
Yeah.
We talk. But I want
that
to
is
do
very specialist.
Yeah.
I mean, the loose theme of this particular edition of our podcast is niche practice areas. And I would say we've just kind of struck niche gold, really, if it's, such a small pool of people. So in terms of, when people come to you, they're obviously clearly in a bit of a state, something is, they've tried to do something and it's been prevented. How can you help them? What do you sort of do in terms of kind of getting in amongst that mesh that you talk about?
So the way I work is I do a free phone call. It can last for up to half an hour, sometimes a little bit longer, but generally speaking, it can be a lot shorter. And I'm trying to work out whether or not there is a challenge that can be made. I mean, if people have already been through the appeal mechanism, so you go to the bank first, and if that fails, then you can either go to SIFAS or the Ombudsman. If you've gone through that process already, then I'm afraid you've had it.
Right.
But if you haven't gone through that process, then I can start to work out whether or not there's a line of attack.
So what you're doing is if you get in early, as you say, you can help people make sure that they go through those processes in the correct way.
Exactly.
Because usually there's a way of submitting evidence and information, etc. Okay.
And there are very complicated legal arguments that back this up.
Yeah.
So we're creating an evidential file to a high standard.
Yeah.
And we're then presenting that to the bank in the first instance. And a lot of the time, the banks will actually say, yeah, fair enough, we'll take this one down. If they don't, then we've got appeal mechanisms. But there are some very complicated FCA rules about what appeals the Ombudsman can consider and what it can't.
Yeah.
And that's another complicating factor within all this.
So what you're saying is, I mean, it can be a real mess if you get stuck with one of these, but there is hope in as much as there is a way through it. But the trick is to maybe not do it yourself, but try and find some specialist help. Is that right?
I agree with that. Some people can get lucky.
Yeah.
And sometimes banks will, okay, fair enough, we've made a mistake. But you're running risk if you do that, because as soon as you've ended up with a final response, then you're heading into a much more difficult line of attack, line of challenge. So I don't say it lightly. I really do think it's important that people take legal advice early doors, particularly if they're for making an appointment to speak to me, and I'm not going to charge you for that initial advice. At least you'll get a heads up about which way this can go. And if it's a dead duck, then I'll tell you.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's what people want to hear, isn't it? Sort of straight talking. You want to come at those sort of things and find out exactly where do I stand.
And then I can give them a bit of advice about what they can do.
Yeah.
If they can't remove the marker, how they can move on with their lives.
Yeah. So as you're talking and as you're telling me about this, Jeremy, it feels like there's very much a kind of a cause and a campaign and a passion for what you do. Is that how you feel about it?
Very much so. It was quite invigorating when I discovered this. I was the first lawyer to actively go out and write about the subject. And when I realised that nobody else had written about it, and when I started to really get into the hardship that this creates, and I started in life as a duty solicitor, as a criminal lawyer, so defending.
Yeah.
And when you do that sort of work for many years, as I did, it does change you. It changes your perspective on life, and I'm a great believer in finding justice.
Yeah. Is that perspective because you sit side by side with someone who's charged with something, or what's that? Is that?
I mean, I'm not here to judge.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm here to test the evidence. I'm here to test the processes. It's the same with being a criminal defence lawyer. Same, if you like, with a prosecutor. You know, when you're prosecuting cases, and I've prosecuted hundreds of cases, you're presenting the case to the court. You have to work within guidance and limits, and you need to be fair.
Yeah.
And one of the things that strikes me about SIFAS markers and the other fraud markers are that they're not fair.
Right.
They're blunt. They are incredibly cruel at times.
Yeah.
And that doesn't sit right with me at all. And that's why I want to see some change in that.
I mean, that's really where this kind of seed of your sort of passion for it comes. It's that, writing an unfairness. It feels like, and you take it very seriously and probably very personally. On that point, you mentioned when we were talking before we started recording this, you're involved in an education program teaching young people about frauds.
That's right. So I did a couple of presentations to schools. My wife used to work in education. I talked to her about some of these hard luck stories. The biggest area that I see are money mules, kids who've been caught up in becoming money launderers.
Right.
And every time I spoke to them, it became apparent, and none of them had a clue what they were doing. They hadn't got a clue what fraud was, let alone what money laundering was.
Yeah.
And that was a real, wow, we need to do something about this. So Maria very kindly worked with me to put forward a presentation, which I took to my daughter's old school. We presented it, and it was extraordinary. The kids were so engaged. They absolutely loved talking about it. They got it. It was serious, and that they could see that, just having half an hour with them prevented them from going down a hole.
Yeah, because they become part of an ecosystem that's run by criminals elsewhere, and they're part of a supply chain. They don't really understand what's going on. It's probably exciting, or there might be some money at the end. So
what happened then was I put a post out on LinkedIn. I do a lot on LinkedIn, and one of my contacts, a chap called Robert Brooker, was chairman of the London Fraud Forum, now the National Fraud Forum, got hold of it and basically set up a call with me, and he said, we can do something about this. This is amazing. And together, Rob and I have worked to generate interest from counter-fraud professionals. So there's over 2,000 members of the Fraud Forum across the UK.
Yeah.
And we put something out to say, look, we think we need to get into schools at an appropriate level. So years 11 through 13, it needs to be face-to-face. You need a captive audience. We then can signpost into other areas like online research and that sort of thing. And the uptake was amazing. We had thousands of people view that post and get interested. And over the last year or so, what we've done is we've built a network of core academics, police, and also a particular bank that is really pushing for this. And now we're trying to persuade UK finance to come on board. That's 300 banks. And what we want to do is take this proposal to government and say, you've got to put this on the national curriculum. And the reason we say that is because various people have tried this before and have been blocked because they just can't get through the doors of the school. The curriculum is just chocker as it is. There's no space for it. Well, we need to make space for this. Because at the end of the day, if we can prevent them falling into this trap in the first place, that's going to be a massive relief economically, socially.
Well, I think,
the country.
Education campaigns are quite good, aren't they, for putting something on an agenda. You have to talk to a particular group of people that can then influence how they're sort of dealing with it on another situation. And so, it's a good place to start. I mean, if ever there was a person who seemed absolutely the perfect person for the job to do that, given your background, your passion for what you're doing, your understanding of this problem, it definitely sort of feels like you, Jeremy. So thankfully you're in the driving seat. Yeah, I can sense that. I sense that, but you're committed to it, and that's good. I mean, it's great that you're doing that as part of Setfords. And I know you've been with us for what, sort of 18 months, 2 years.
Yeah.
What made you make the leap from whatever you were doing before to becoming a consultant?
So, without doing my old firm down at all, I'm not going to whatsoever.
Yeah.
They offered me a partnership. They were in Liverpool. I live in Devon.
Yeah.
And there's got to be an easier way of doing this.
Yeah.
So I looked around, and the idea of, because I've got a robust practice.
Yeah.
It seemed that a consultancy model might work, and I'm pleased to say it does.
Yeah.
And I've got all the background support, the admin support and marketing. I've got all the compliance team behind me.
Yeah.
All of that is within the system. And it's made it very, very easy for me then just to get in and concentrate on what I actually do.
Yeah, I was going to say, it feels like that support structure does allow you to focus on, what is your mission?
Well, exactly.
Yeah.
So there's no internal politics here, which is extraordinary. When you come from, law firms where politics is everything.
Sort of traditional establishment.
And you toe the line, you have to go to various events and things, and you stand there thinking, what's this actually going to do for my practice?
Yeah.
I don't need that. Whereas here, I really can just get stuck into what I'm doing.
Well, that's good to hear. What's your sort of favourite thing about being a consultant, apart from the fact that it clearly enables you to spend time on what you really care about?
It's the flexibility.
Yeah.
It's, I don't have to work 9 to 5 hours. I start early and I finish late, and during the course of the day, I might knock off for a couple of hours and do what I need to do.
Yeah.
I've got that control over my life, which I like.
Yeah, well, that's good to hear. I mean, that's a sort of a segue into perhaps a more lighter part of this conversation. I did mention it to you earlier. I know you've been thinking about it in the background. Obviously, that flexibility, that freedom, in my world, you can visualize it through a backpack. The idea of putting a few things in, some sandwiches or whatever, and kind of sticking it on your back and going out for a long walk. So what we like to do on this podcast is play a little game of what's in your backpack. Assume you've got like a laptop and a phone and, probably a pad and a pen or something in there. If you could put 3 items in there, 2 of which are probably fit in your backpack and maybe quite useful, one of which defies the laws of physics and can be any size you like, what would your 3 items be that you would have in your backpack, Jeremy?
A dog lead. First of all. Okay. Secondly, obviously, the poo banks that go with it.
You are clearly a dog lover.
Yeah, and thirdly, probably a racehorse.
A racehorse?
Why not?
Really?
Just stick a racehorse in the back. They are lovely.
Well, they are lovely, yeah. Are you a bit of a betting man?
No.
No. Okay. You just like to watch the races for fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm with you on a racehorse, actually.
Yeah,
a bit of Ascot. It's Epsom, I think, at the weekend.
It is.
So, yeah, big part of the racing calendar. Well, look, Jeremy, it's been a real pleasure talking to you. It's lovely to meet you. I've never met you before, so it's been wonderful to meet you for the first time. It's amazing what you're doing. I really think it's an important thing that you're doing, and I'm really proud, actually, that you've chosen Setfords as your home and to allow us a chance to support you. Your education program sounds amazing. I'd love to hear more about that. We would love to get involved and support that. But look, Jeremy Asher, thank you for joining me on Open Matters. It's been great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Stay with us now on Open Matters, where we're going to be talking to some unsung heroes who work at Setfords. We're just about to do one of my favourite bits on the podcast. Now, I do realise this is only episode 2, and we've only done it once before, but it's definitely my favourite bit. It's where we get to take a little peek behind the curtains of what goes on at our Setfords HQ in Guildford. We have around about 130 staff whose primary role is to look after our consultants so they can focus on the lawyering and look after their clients. And clients is very relevant to our conversation that we're just about to have. Tanis Unwin-Wade, Rachel Kemp from Setfords Business Development Team. Welcome to Open Matters.
Thank you.
So this is called Unsung Heroes. And we just like to find out, as I've said, a little bit about what you do. So Tanis, turning to you first, if you could just give me a little average day in the life of you in the business development team.
Well, we start bright and early, but as a team, we also work Saturdays, and that's proved beneficial for everybody, so that we aim to very quickly and efficiently deal with inquiries as they come in, and we're dealing with a wide range of potential clients. We obviously work hard to qualify them, make sure they understand, that this solicitor will then contact them to advise the next steps and what their fees will be. There is still a high number of people who obviously need legal aid, but we also help them to give them good information to help them go and get help elsewhere.
Okay.
But yes, it's a very full-on day. We deal with a high number of inquiries, but we work to do it efficiently, but also with great care and kindness to the people we speak to. They are probably stressed, dealing with things that they've never had to deal with before.
Yeah.
And we work to accommodate all that, get them in feeling like they've made a good decision to get help, get a measure of control, and then feel able to move forward with what they need to do next.
Okay, yeah, it sounds like a really big role, actually, and there is a lot to it. Rachel, just give me an idea of, how you break down the amount of inquiries you've got coming in, because just looking at some data on the business in general, marketing generates an awful lot of leads. I think the last financial year there was something like 35,000. So I know not all of those are going to lead to work, and some of them just get sort of discounted. But in terms of how you as a department deal with those, do you look after individual practice areas? How does that work?
Yeah, so I guess I'm a kind of a new addition to the team, really. So I started up just picking up a few different inquiries in only a couple of areas of law, but the rest of the team work with all types of inquiries. So we were saying the other day, 1 minute you can be kind of talking about a family law matter, and it could be something quite difficult or tricky conversation like a divorce, and then you might go on to talking to someone about purchasing their first house on like the residential side. So really there's such variety, and I think it's quite a skill to switch over to the different inquiry that we might take on next.
Mm-hmm. And so Tanis was just saying that, there's a sense of you're helping people at an important time. Is that must be quite hard to kind of maintain that, because there's someone on the other end of the phone who really needs something probably right now. How do you deal with that?
Yes, I think it's a bit of an emotional roller coaster, really, and you go along that journey with the client. So sometimes they could get a bit tearful on the phone. So it's about being that kind of listening ear, I suppose, and then kind of guiding them in the right direction of how we can help, or if we can't help, obviously, like Tanis said, directing them to someone that can.
Yeah. So Tanis, you're also a mental health first aider here. So
Yes.
You've obviously got a kind of a natural inclination to want to kind of help and support people. Does actually doing that role within Setfords, does that actually help in your day-to-day work?
Well, I've always wanted to maintain that as part of who I am, to always be understanding out someone else and what they need and how to communicate with them. So actually my role, I love so much the diversity, but also the reward you get back from seeing someone helped. And obviously, generating business for the company as well, of course. But that was a knock-on effect due to the concept of the company and how they want us all to have the best environment, to be able to communicate with each other about what we need, led on to me wanting to be a mental first aider. which I wish I'd done a long time ago. But it's just an amazing place to work because there is everything we need to make sure we can give our best and we're in a good place.
Oh, that's lovely. I mean, I'm sure someone landing with you on the phone has probably sort of made the day with both of you, actually. I know, because we've spent lots of time kind of in different meetings and things talking about what you do. I mean, one of the things here, which is quite important, I mean, this podcast is really for our consultants. There will be perhaps some other consultants working elsewhere being nosy and seeing what we do. Your role really is kind of generating business for consultants. So you deal with them regularly on a day-to-day basis. Do you have that sort of personal contacts? You've got to know, individuals within that group?
Yes, I think most of our solicitors really, we're grateful. They appreciate what we do because we obviously filter, try and get them the very best inquiries that they then obviously work hard to convert into business. But they also, we've built a great relationship with a lot of our solicitors. We really want to embrace the new ones, make them feel really welcome, because it is a great system, process, but also a very human touch to everything we do. And we love it if they communicate with us.
Yeah.
We obviously will always help if they need us to reassign or do anything additional.
It feels like that human touch element is really important. I think we were in a meeting, weren't we, last Friday? We were talking about the role of, you and the team. And I think I described it as being a little bit like working in accident and emergency. You've got a long line of people coming to see you. They need some help. You need to work out how important is it, what practice area is required, and then bleep a consultant, if you like, to continue the analogy, to kind of, pass on the work. Is that what it feels like to you? Does it ever get stressful?
It doesn't feel like A&E because it's a consistent, you're in a very high state of getting things done efficiently, quickly, but also giving people the time they need. So I'm sure our department's going to get bigger because there is so much more we can do yet. We're getting a new system shortly to be even more efficient, which the end result has got to be that we keep giving as much time as we can to the person on the phone.
Yeah.
Not just becoming a machine.
Well, we appreciate you taking the time out of your day, because I know this new system is kind of in the process of being launched. So it's something that our consultants, some may have kind of tested it. Not many of them know that it's kind of coming. It's quite a simple, from their perspective, quite a simple changeover. How have you sort of found that? Because you're working on it at the moment, aren't you? Is it going to make life easier, do you think? What's the outcome?
Yeah, so I think it's going to be absolutely great. So I think it will make kind of allocating leads to our consultants easier. It will kind of go on their availability and we'll work with their schedule. So we'll only allocate a lead if they are available that day, and they can always reject the lead if it's not something they would want to pick up. So I think there's a lot more choice and a lot more options for them. And then for us, it would be nice to kind of allocate them that way as well.
Yeah, okay. So better for people kind of coming to you with a need, and then better in order to kind of deal with that, I suppose. So just outside of your day-to-day work, how long have you been at Setfords?
I believe I've been here since August, but yeah, it feels like a lifetime, I guess. The team's been so lovely, just really easy to kind of settle in and get the hang of it, really.
And what about you, Tanis? How long have you been?
I've been here 4 years now.
4 years.
But it seems a lot longer, and it's been so exciting just how the company's changed and grown and still kept its identity. And now we're just going to go on to do even more,
It's exciting, isn't it? It feels
they don't stand still, like we're getting our new system. And it's going to mean that we've got more time for people as opposed to doing admin. So, that's going to be amazing.
So just before we go, we should wish you a belated happy birthday. It was your birthday last week.
Yes.
I know you had a little bit of celebration here and some stuff going on outside. So happy birthday for last week. And I think you're going to Glastonbury, aren't you? So you must be very excited.
Yeah, very excited.
Yeah, well, I'm going as well, so maybe we'll bump into each other.
Little Setfords meetup,
I think we should. There's at least 3 or 4 of us, I think. I don't know. Let's definitely try and do that. Well, look, Tanis, Rachel, thank you so much for coming to tell us a little bit about your role within the company. It's really important, and we really love working with you. And I know everyone feels the same around the company. You do a great job, and we are super grateful, as are our consultants. So thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Don't go away. We haven't quite finished yet. We've got one more interview on open matters, so stick with us. Welcome to Open Matters, the Setfords Podcast. I keep adding a bit of drama in that every time I say it. Susie Blade, Head of HR at Setfords. Hello.
Hi, Eric.
How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks.
Good bank holiday weekend?
Amazing, yeah.
Excellent. I gather you went camping. That sounds like fun.
Yep, did go camping. The sun helped, definitely.
Were you relaxing because you've won so many awards lately? You just were chilling out because everything is amazing.
Yeah, just a complete celebration of my brilliance.
Fabulous. Absolutely fabulous. You're owning it. That's what you've got to do. Look, for people listening or watching in, you were awarded HR Professional of the Year at the UK Company Culture Awards, where we were actually a finalist in 3 categories.
Yeah.
2 of those were for our mental health work, which you've been spearheading, and also for our wellbeing work, which you've also been spearheading and working with others in the company. So congratulations.
Thank you.
And well done. It's really well deserved. I think, when you came back with that, there's no one in the building that's surprised that you got that. What does it mean to you personally to win an award like that?
I think I just, I had my children quite young. And so I've sort of possibly done it backwards to some people. And, I desperately wanted to kind of develop myself and grow a career in HR. And I do back myself and I work very hard. And, I've got this amazing opportunity at Setfords. And, I've been given the autonomy and the sort of freedom to kind of really embrace things and do lots of things that maybe we haven't done in the past. And so having that recognition and being in a room when we were at the awards, surrounded by lots of brilliant, hardworking people, to be the one person that's kind of sort of picked out of the bunch is just...
Yeah, I mean, I will admit, actually, for the second time in this podcast series, in the last episode, I was sitting next to somebody who won an award. I was there with you.
Yeah.
You won it, and you were genuinely surprised. Kind of blown away, I think. It was a lovely moment.
Yeah.
It must have felt great for you.
No, it really did. And I was super surprised. I know I work hard, but I think, and, there might be some people that recognise this, you do have an element of imposter syndrome and you do question yourself.
Yep.
And, I know I've spoken to some of our consultants as well as the people, our employees at Setfords, where you do question yourself and you think, I think I'm doing a good job. But so it's having that moment of actually, and owning it.
Little chance to sort of step back and reflect and kind of appreciate yourself, I suppose.
Yeah.
Now, the awards we've been speaking about, it's not the only thing that Setfords as a company has won. We've also just been in the Sunday Times Best Places to Work 2023 list.
Yeah.
Companies all across the UK enter that. And they are measured on a whole bunch of things, well-being, diversity, happiness. And, we did really well. And I suppose with that and, the awards that you won, how do you think that having an award-winning team here at Setfords supports and benefits our consultants?
I think it really helps our employees to see the progress. And the thing is, Chris and Guy from the beginning have always wanted to foster this culture, of engaged and rewarded people. And I think when we start winning these awards, and obviously May has been incredible because, 2 sort of awards, one personally for myself, but I think it's motivating and it's being part of this picture that's growing and getting more exciting as Setfords grows and, our consultant numbers grow. People know that they can join something and actually be a part of something that I think is really special.
Yeah. And you mentioned there Chris Setford and Guy Setford, our co-CEOs, just in case there's anyone listening who may not know them. We have people being nosy in this podcast, trying to find out what we're doing, why we're winning awards.
Welcome, nosy people.
Exactly, yeah. Welcome to you. We love the extra people who are listening. They very much kind of set the course, didn't they, for a company that, wanted to value its people and look after its people. Yeah. And that's definitely something that you've sort of picked up. I mean, how long have you been with the company now?
Yeah, so 2 years in August.
And in that time, you must have seen some changes in the business, but you've also been making changes from an HR perspective. I mean, for those people that don't know, there are so many different activities going on here, from, meditation in the mornings to having dogs in the office on Wednesdays. We've got a fully funded kind of restaurant.
Yeah.
You occasionally invite members of staff to bring in members of their family.
Yeah.
There's all sorts of activities led by a diversity team,
Yeah.
green team, a social team.
Yeah.
There's so much going on. What does it mean to you to be able to kind of be, I guess, in a sort of the pilot seat on that, but with a lot of people helping behind you?
Well, it's super exciting. And as we've said, sort of Chris and Guy have always championed that. And I suppose what we've done through our HR team is just maybe formalise things a little bit more and make sure that actually, it's super consistent. And some of these things, that we have dogs in the office every Wednesday, every summer and Christmas, we have families invited for kind of, family lunches in our bistro. But I think we have so many suggestions from employees and consultants as well. I know our consultants make lots of suggestions to our wellbeing team. It's just engagement. People are super involved and want to get involved. And I think it helps empower our people, because we're giving them the mic, I suppose, and saying, what do you want? What do you want to see here?
Yeah.
And again, that just appeals. And you then have, we have lots of employees bringing on family members or friends, because they're like, come and work here.
Yeah.
We get to do this. And I excuse me, suggested this, and they've done this. So I think it's almost just giving our employees that sort of seat at the table to kind of have a little bit of control.
I suppose for me, the way I kind of see that is if you've got like a really strongly motivated group of people. I mean, in effect, everyone here is kind of supporting consultants in one way or another.
Yeah.
And mostly, actually, most of those people, if they're kind of motivated, happy, they're doing a great job, which means, consultants can get on with lawyering and looking after their clients and, doing whatever they want to do. It's a nice kind of holistic sort of ecosystem to drop into bingo buzzword words.
And I think our consultants should, they should, and I think a lot of them are really reassured, because they know that those support teams that we've got in place for them, whether it's our amazing admin team, our some of our admin who work in the scanning room, and secretaries, and then all of our other teams, we're really keen to look after their mental health, their well-being, so that they can do the best job they possibly can when they come to work. So our consultants can, pick up the work they want to pick up from wherever they are at whatever time they want to. And hopefully it just creates a really supportive, happy group.
Well, I mean, we both wander around the office, don't we, and see people's smiling faces a lot of the time, which is very rewarding.
Yeah.
You've been doing a lot of work with sort of diversity and inclusion and belonging. I know it's something you feel really strongly about. Yeah. And there's a couple of things that you've been working on. One is an allyship promise. What is explain that, just so people understand?
Yeah. So we had a really interesting session run last year with Pearl Moses, our compliance director. And she ran a session on allyship and did a sort of FAQ and FAQ?
Q&A? FAQs might follow the Q&A.
Yes. Q&A. Yeah, fair enough. So she ran that, and we watched a TED talk, and we then, off the back of that, we ran some allyship training with an amazing lady called Professor Funke Abimbola. And she did that in November for us, and she mentioned the sort of concept of this allyship promise. And it's something that over a little bit of time and some conversations with people, it's basically, I suppose if you were going to look at it in traditional terms, a code of conduct, but digging a little bit deeper into kind of the behaviour and the attitudes that we do actually expect from people who work at Setfords. And actually not just our employees, we've sent it out to all of our consultants as well, because we are all flying the Setfords banner. And it's just having this, inclusive, kind, which I think we maybe overuse it, but actually it doesn't take much to be kind and to put yourself in someone else's shoes. And with allyship, and I guess I mentioned it earlier about bringing our employees to the table, is giving people with, if you've got a strong voice,
giving someone who maybe hasn't got a strong voice a place at the table where they can then actually share their really valuable insights and experience.
So you're kind of pulling them into the discussion, giving them a chance to share their views, opinions, feelings.
Yeah,
no, it's great. And of course, it sets a benchmark. So basically, a promise means I promise to kind of, work and live this way, while I'm an employee or a consultant here. It's an awesome scheme.
Yeah.
And I know our CEOs have been the first people to kind of sign up to that.
Yeah. They were. They championed it, and they were really, really sort of passionate about it as well. So I'm in the process of getting theirs framed to have up on the wall.
Yeah.
So it's
good reminder.
Yeah.
There you go, guys.
Yeah, exactly.
There it is. Now, a second thing you've been working on, which I think is really brilliant, is the Black Lawyers Matter mentoring program. I think Setfords have signed up for that.
Yeah.
What is it? How does it work?
Yeah. So with Black Lawyers Matter, it's a mentoring program, and we're actually we're engaging in both areas. So there's a junior area we can work on, and then senior. So with the senior side of things, we're actually going to be looking for some of our consultants to sign up to this.
Yeah. To be mentors?
To be mentors. We've got 3 spaces, and this is for qualified Black lawyer mentoring.
Yeah.
The idea being that only 2% of qualified lawyers in the UK are Black. And the percentage has decreased from 3% previously.
So it's going down.
It's actually going backwards. So the idea being for this, we can pair up, and the company that we're working with are amazing. They're going to pair up sort of the 3 consultants that we get on board with 3 qualified Black lawyers. And then not only can the sort of Black lawyers have Sorry, I'm losing my train of thought.
No, that's okay. They're obviously in a program and able to kind of work through, understanding, working in a law firm.
Yeah.
And becoming comfortable with that.
Yeah.
And getting support from people who are knowledgeable and experienced to help bring them along.
Exactly. And it's an expanded network, so access to opportunities for those Black lawyers.
Yeah.
And then also for us, it gives us an additional insight into what measures we can put in place to ensure the retention of Black lawyers.
Yeah.
So it's really valuable. There's also the junior side. So we're going to have 3 mentors internally who work with maybe sort of young Black people that are just coming out of university, contemplating what they want to do. And it's the concept, what I really loved about this was the reverse mentoring side of it.
Yeah.
So for me, as a privileged, middle-aged white woman, I might be paired up with a young Black man who's just left college.
Yeah.
And it's a hugely important thing for me to kind of understand where this man has come from, his experience, and think about how then I can sort of use that learning to put into place when we're employing young Black people.
There's a lovely trade there, isn't there? Because he's going to give you something, some real knowledge and some understanding of his life. And, we don't, as you say, unless you walk in someone else's shoes, you don't really understand what's going on. And then, of course, the opportunity to gain some confidence in a world that you may not necessarily think, this is for me or I can do this. So you're opening a door. I mean, it's great from my perspective to hear that there's a junior aspect to it. One of the things I encounter a lot in my role, I speak to journalists and they say because of the kind of model that we have, we're not really investing enough in that sort of younger end of the market, but we are. We actually do quite a lot of initiatives that support juniors and trainees, and it's great that this one covers that as well.
We're really excited in it, and it's sort of, we're hoping to sort of launch in the next, month or so, and I'm hoping we're going to be overrun with consultants who are interested.
Yeah, I think you probably will be. I mean, we've just spoken on this podcast to Jeremy Asher. I mean, passionate. He's really passionate about his work, and I'm absolutely certain in a world where there aren't enough lawyers in his specialism, he might well find some time to do that. And as a group of people, they're experts, and I'm sure they want to share their skills and let other people have a chance to get on the ladder in the world of law. Susie Blade. I don't know why I'm calling you Susie Blade.
I like that. No, just always use both names.
Okay, Susie Blade. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Loved talking to you. I love working with you. As you know, we spend a fair bit of time chatting stuff, don't we? So, thank you for joining us on Open Matters. You've been a great guest. You do a wonderful job. You definitely deserve this. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks, Eric.
You've been listening to Open Matters, the Setfords Podcast with me, your host, Eric Woollard-White. I never get tired of saying that. We've had a great episode. I would like to thank everyone who took part, everyone we interviewed, and I'd particularly like to thank my producer, Sara Jones, and our director, sound man, technician, and all-round genius, Matt James. We'll see you again soon.